Welcome back, everybody, after an absolute demolition, destruction, domination, other words beginning with D that involve the death and demise of a team. As Karmine Corps woke up today and chose violence.
And Phantasma, you could see what they were looking towards, if they could survive that top pressure early. Paco, who has been a weak side player for most of this split, could have actually maybe gotten away with this. And you see what happens when Malphite gets ahead of Graves in some situations. Graves struggles to get value, but that is absolutely not what happened. Phantasma really struggled, and they lost this top lane skirmish, and that felt like that was the real watershed moment for him.
Yeah, and they try to cover the dive. Nicolex gets something, but then on the other side, you saw Pepe getting caught out, and then they go again for this play at the Raptors, and it goes 1 for 3. A great smite, 3 talent strike for 1-1-3, and the game is suddenly completely out of control.
And I liked the mentality from Phantasma, but the execution from Karmine Corps was superb. It was what we wanted of this team and what their fans would have wanted to. So they walk away with a very dominant victory, and they set themselves a little bit more back on track than they were yesterday, of course, after their own crushing loss.
Yeah, it was seemingly a wake-up call, and of course, there's been a few of those over the split for Karmine Corps, sometimes looking absolutely incredible, and then they have the little foibles they had in playoffs.
But Sam, who got a 5-man ultimate this game? It wasn't anyone on Karmine Corps.
No, it wasn't. Nicolex comes in with the mother of all cataclysms that did about 5%.
About 300 damage.
Like, if in any other game state, it feels like there might have been something, but at this point, what you're watching is just the health bars, the gold lead, everything being just too much for Phantasma to deal with.
It was a very clean game from Karmine Corps. It was very poised game. They were sat there. They didn't really give any openings. They didn't really fumble any of the openings that they were given on the other side too. And this is, again, Karmine Corps going to be walking ahead to 1-on-1 in this group and trying to keep pace with the rest.
And indeed, considering this group as well, looks pretty damn competitive. X7.
Cayman Legion and X7.
Yeah, Cayman Legion, X7, two of the other favorites potentially to come and win the whole damn tournament potentially. And you can see here at post-game breakdown, that is a hell of a goal grab from 0 to 17.5k in sub 20 minutes.
This is one of the few times where almost every member has almost doubled the damage of their opposing number. You can see that in both carry roles in terms of the AD carries, in terms of the mid laners. Top lane you expect with the Graves versus the Malphite.
Sure.
But you look at this gold graph and you think, heck, maybe it would have been double in the jungle were it not for that ill-fated 5-man ultimate too. It was, again, all of these levers being pulled in the right direction, and Karmine Corps understanding where their advantages were and playing through them.
Absolutely. But enough about the LFL for now. We must turn our eyes to other regions. We've got ourselves Atletico versus Bisons. Should be a pretty exciting one because, yes, Atletico lost the other day, but they made it damn well exciting. I am really excited to see what they can do today.
Absolutely. And I think that, Atletico coming in as the PG Nats representative, I loved what the PG Nats did last tournament, actually, with Matchgo and also overpowered as well in the play-in stage. They were done a little bit harsh in their group draws in the last tournament of the Amazon European Masters, and they had like a play-ins group with there was the Group D, I believe, last time with like Maus and a load of other very strong
brutal
teams.
Stuff,
it was brutal stuff. But then you look at this team coming through now. We were speaking with Moonboy a bit, actually, who's a PG Nats analyst, and they were kind of surprised that Atletico came through in the first place because of their own inconsistencies, but they had a glow up, and of course Matchgo fumbled a bit in their own split. This is the team that they've sent through into the European Masters group stage, and these are the players that are going to be that.
And it's not the first time as an European Masters these guys have made it to. The likes of Enns and Kospek, I believe this, and particularly this is 4th EU Masters.
Kospek is their 5th EU Masters, I believe.
Mad stuff. And of course Gabo, talking to some of the other PG Nats analysts and the like, they reckon behind the likes of Chizuke, Shadow, this is the best Italian player the region's ever produced. Period. He's so good.
There was, of course, Click, one of the players from that region who was playing incredibly well last year. They've had a bit of a struggle in this split as well, but these are the players which really will need to be stood up and accounted for to take on a struggling Bison, starting at 0-2 themselves. Both these teams 0-2. One team will pick up their first victory today, and Bisons came in with a lot of fanfare. They came in with a lot of hype around the drafts that they had, their interesting playstyle, but it has not hit it off well so far.
It's absolutely not. Of course, Gooby, this is a player I've heard a lot about over this split, purely because Goldborg, fellow caster and friend of mine, just raves about the guy. He pulls off some incredible stuff. Karma,
Gooby is really good.
He's really good. We've seen some crazy stuff out of this team, and I'm so excited to watch. Exactly. It's just not quite clicked yet, and as we're kind of getting through to this last match of the first round robin, they need to start making it work now, all things start to get pretty scary for them.
Because, this is the last match of their first round robin. You only get 6 games. It is a double best of 1 round robin. It is quite unforgiving. We've seen teams at Worlds, at MSI, be 1 win away from even tiebreakers, and things get very close to the wire. And as we were saying, there aren't really free wins at this stage of the tournament. In play-ins, sometimes you can have teams which have just kind of cobbled it together for that stage, or they've fallen apart after a difficult finals performance because they tend not to be first seeds from their regions. In this game, though, you're looking at this, and Bison's really, much like we saw Carmine Corp do in the last game, they need a momentum win. They need something to just solidify themselves, settle themselves. They have a lot of very hypey players. If they can just calm down a little, settle themselves in, get 1 win on the board, that would mean a lot to this team.
Absolutely, it would. And while they need to calm down a little bit in terms of the plays, potentially, I'm hoping the drafts don't. Because we've seen some really fun stuff from both of these teams. I recall a Draven game out of the side of Atlanta. I recall things like Seraphine and Karma being options for the likes of Bisons. And when you're coming in, it's like, play to comfort, play to surprise a little bit. But play style and comps don't necessarily have to be the same. You can play calm even if the drafts are a bit out there.
So now we're looking into this matchup in particular as well, and we're getting straight into those picks and bans. And I really hope we are going to get a scrappy affair. As you said, I want things to be a little bit interesting, but because for me, when both teams kind of dive into the special stuff, it's a real test of how well the teams actually understand compositions. Because when you kind of get used to free-forming how you're playing around your teams, when you're picking stuff like the AP Cogmore, like Bisons were doing against USE, you're sat there thinking, okay, right, you need to understand where everyone's sat in this composition now, because there are a lot of very awkward win conditions which you're not practiced against.
And you can see some of those awkward win conditions that you're not practiced against getting banned away. Draven out from Bison, Seraphine, Zeri away from the side of Atleto as well. A lot of strong picks, sometimes a bit generically, but things like the Seraphine and the Draven very much team specific.
Yeah. Now, Moen has been a big Lucian player too. That has not been banned up by Atlanta, and it is a triple flex for the Bisons. That would be a very easy first round for them, but Atlanta say, no, we don't really care about it.
Yeah, the Gwen instead is the pick away for 1 final ban now from Bisons to solidify those initial bans. And there's a few things that have been left open that worth keeping your eyes on. Things like, Jinx still up, of course, been very happily picked up by a lot of teams. Same sort of deal with something like the Aphelios. You can still trade that out. The Ornn is decided as that final ban. Gabo has been really good. He's nearly turned around so many fights on things like the set.
Yeah.
Exactly. So taking away another one of those kind of top lane playmaking tanky champions.
So now you're looking at, again, stuff like Jinx, Aya, Ahri, safe blind picks, right? Not that there aren't answers to them, but you are kind of looking at those champions as ones which are easier to blind pick. Now, when you're against Bisons, I don't think there is such thing as an easy blind pick. I would wonder now if a Misfortune is going to be locked in. That's something that we saw from, of course, Gamer Legion locked that in at the game yesterday. And that is one of the real hard counters against Desire. However, there's lots of options left up on the table.
Well, we've talked about the Misfortune. It will be locked in. Still some questions about what style of Misfortune we get. Of course, we've got the newer Leandry's build that's been rearing its head more recently, which might be an option here.
Yeah, Leandry's its man minute. It becomes really, really powerful where you max your E, and because your ult scales with AP but still does physical damage, it still works into a larger armor pen build.
So you can definitely look towards something like that. They're going to lock it with the Jarvan, so you've got the shot glass combo.
It's the shot glass combo. Maybe we can get Ziggs in there to make it a proper bomb effect. And what this does mean is, again, you've got 2 backline AD carries. One of them has play event versus the Jarvan. One of them doesn't. A little bit unfair.
Indeed. That said, you can still lock them in the cage, wait for them to come down, and then shoot them, which feels a little bit cheating, like clay pigeon shooting was. You generally don't wait for it to land on the ground, but this is the way it works now.
I was about to say, I mean, is that what happens when Misfortune kills Xayah or Rakan? Is it just clay pigeon shooting? Or is that only Graves because of the shotgun?
That's a question that I have yet to consider in depth and might have to wait for another time, but we'll come back to that maybe. Either way.
Well, Mighty Dragon's got the volleyball.
Indeed, there'll be a Mighty Bear in the jungle.
And wait, Mighty Bear was another player.
He was indeed. That's why I read the reference.
I was like, wow, okay. So Mighty Dragon with Jonix actually used to play over in the LCL, over in the Russian region. And now my Dragon, after a couple of splits there, has gone off all over the place and has come over to the PG Nerds.
Of course, there's been some fair amounts of weirdness played in the mid lane, but Victor is certainly not one of them. Locks that in. Very comfortable pick in the mid lane. You got a lot of now AoE damage between the Victor and there's a lot of zone control there as well. So if you can hold an area of the river, hold an area of the jungle, you've got yourself some good tools to secure that corridor.
Okay, and now with the Corki locked in, there is some real ability to jump forward. And Victor, as much as you'd like to outrange, against all 3 of the big engaged tools that you've already got in, or like the overlaid damage, Victor is going to have an awful time defending themselves against that, which makes me think, what do? Do you lock in a stronger front line and have to force them to play through it, separate the team by having a Scion or something stood in between you and the rest of the enemy Bison's team? Or do you have to pick something like a Tom Kench, actually try and bail out your Victor? Neither seems like a particularly good option here.
Absolutely, because never mind clay pigeon shooting. This is more like shooting fish in a barrel, rolling up to Jarvan's festival stand where he locks everybody else in and everyone else throws their R buttons at the people trapped in there and have a horrible time of it. And throw a package over the top of that as well. And you can see the combo coming together from Bison's. A little less out there than some of their other drafts, but it certainly makes a lot of sense.
No Ivan yet.
No Ivan yet.
No, but then I think
Corky Tom.
But I again, kind of speaking to this logic, right? Bison's banning away those stronger front lines, which might be, if you're diving in as the Jarvan, as the Corky, you still don't want someone stood between you and the carries kind of disrupting your efforts to kill that backline. Stuff like the set, stuff like that sign, not only is it good bans against Gabo because that set has been such a big pick for him, again, it just plays into maybe the one failing point of your composition were it led to lock in a strong enough front line.
Both teams here, 0-2, looking to pick up that win. One of these teams will be walking away winless from this first round robin, which is an absolute disaster for either of these teams. Chase the final ban away from Rowan, unless, of course, there's some real shenanigans to happen. Doubt it right now. We're looking at support. We're looking at top lane counter pick. It's been the go-to every single match today. It's part of the meta. And I'm assuming we'll see potentially a blind pick support here, because do you want to give Gabo counter pick?
I think you're pretty... I mean, now the Jace has been banned out, you start questioning things a little bit more. I think if the Jace is available, that would have been a pretty easy lock-in. But now you could have either gone for the Leona, the Nautilus, or maybe the Rakan to kind of give you, again, an extra level of engage, be able to play through bot side early. Nautilus is able to fight from level 1, gives you an extra power in that 2v2 to take over another side of the map.
The response looking to be potentially something like a Leona. More of that zone control, more of that non-committal hard engage you can throw out. Another bit of tools to potentially punish people diving in on you. See how it plays out from here. They've got themselves a top laner to go towards. Well, what does Gabo have in his back pocket? What does he want to go towards? It's such an important playmaker for this team. Something like a Camille, maybe an option.
I was wondering, particularly when you've got a mobile backline as a release in the Misfortune, and then having the Corky, which can lose out in the 1v1, it wouldn't be a bad pick. Something which is a bit more safe to blind pick like the Gnar, though, you can understand that being the more preferential pick just because Camille has harder counters than Gnar in some ways. Not that Gnar is not uncounterable, don't get me wrong, but Camille, when you're in a bad matchup, is pretty sad.
And I'll never entirely hate Gnar into Jarvan, because if you have a Mega Gnar and you put a Catacombs there, it's like, well, thank you for the free wall. Like, you have at least got tools there to potentially punish the overdive, and you can look to get onto something like the Misfortune, who unlikely to run something like a Gale Force with the way things are, as Karma top is locked in, shields and heals and ways to potentially prevent some of the burst coming out of someone like Zonix.
And it also means that early on, Gnar's not going to be able to push in. Mid lane's going to be a bit of a wash. Bot lane, you expect either to be zoned off the wave by Comet E trades from the Misfortune. Albatreva should be able to have more ability to play through his lanes because they just tend to have more early control. And then once it does get up to the big grouped up stages, Moen at this point doesn't have to play a Lucian, which can't team fight, playing a Karma, which makes everyone else much more impactful.
Well, you've got the tools to do it. You've got the additional support to keep your double AD carries alive, even if they're really both of these AD carries actually casters, let's be real. You've got the engage option with the Jarvan. On the other side, Atleto, that's about a standard semi, I'll call it a front to back, but like zone control front to backy kind of comp. It's very standard as far as you see on that front.
It is. So now you start have to asking questions like, okay, Jarvan versus Volibear, what are their options? We already said actually Bisons probably have the upper edge in that just because their ability to control waves earlier into that game. I think Bisons have walked away with a much easier comp to play than they have done in their first couple of games, and they're doing with an easier early game too. Much better from them in terms of how consistent they can play out through the game.
I will say, though, that we did see a Volibear game the other day from one man named Haru, where they absolutely stormed through the early game and got things rolling from there. And if you can go on the front foot rather than the back foot, start getting onto those AD carry caster, whatever they are now, champions, maybe you can make some stuff happen here. Onto the Rift now, though. Atleto versus Bisons here, the Amazon European Masters. A very important game for both.
So, both teams sat at 0-2. LVP not had a great tournament so far. Barca locked out in that playing stage, lost to Bifrost 2-0. Of course, now we've seen them pull out a pretty important victory of their own. We get to sit here sitting pretty as NLC fans and casters and all the rest of it. But either way, the LVP would love to have the game themselves a bit more of a momentum booster. Even Fnatic Team Kesso losing a game of their own the other day. Want to try and stabilize. It is not even halfway through that group stage yet. Don't want to put on the warning sirens just quite yet, but still to knock to that confidence.
And for the first time in a day, we haven't seen an invade to get vision down on camps. Just going to be a straight 5-man fan and nothing else to write home about right now.
Well, level 1, Volibet does a lot of damage. There's a Nautilus, there's a Karma. There's a lot of ability to walk in and go, ha, this is a really bad idea. So I'm not going to be risked at this point. And I think this now is going to be a question of what can Volibear do kind of against what is expected of these lanes. Because Volibear does have, of course, that incredibly powerful level 3 spike. Jarvan can dank early too, but you are kind of sat there thinking, Volibear, you got to do something because your early lanes are not going to be giving you much to go off of.
Magic Q, the Soul Flare comes out, gets a little bit of a chunk, but not too much more home. Honestly, it's probably reached a little bit of assistance on the blue buff take in some ways.
Thanks for the leash, I guess. Do have, of course, bot lane doing some things of its own too, and I have to see now whether Oscuro and Gooby can take control of this lane because it is notoriously quite bad into the Comet misfortune which we're seeing.
And don't quite have the range, and Gooby can do a lot of damage, but then the turnaround from Coldspect, who does land that Zenith Blade. Oscuro on the other side, though, doing a lot of work to get ends locked down. There comes the Make It Rain Mark II. Coldspect traded out on as well, and the HP lead does go Bison's favor.
I do think Coldspect goes for the right option there. You're trading health and a support for the AD carry. There is an Ignite blown from the Nautilus, but not from Coldspect's Leona on the other side, though.
Will be a Albatroba who will be spotted out coming for this invade. Will throw a ward down onto the Rev buff. Volibear's coming, but he'll be a little ways away and ends, and Cospect have to back out as that dredge line hitbox not quite large enough despite all the various references and frustrations of League players around the world.
So I know it's the misfortune with the new skin on the one side, but ends bunny hops just out of the way of that one with a hop skip and a sidestep. Scary though. And Gooby still managing to get control over this side. Top lane's pushing in, mid lane's a wash. It's pretty much what you expect out of these lanes. And you're looking here as Mighty Dragon, who is, again, just kind of lacking options at this point.
You got mid-wave shove, that's great, but you are losing out on the top side. You are losing out on the bot side. That leaves Bison's with free reign to go and get that slight early invade, the ward onto the red buff to see whether there was an angle in bot side. We'll slow down Jarvan's clearer just a little bit. It's not really costing that much. You can walk from this blue buff into the Scuttle Crab with Oscuro just securing and patrolling the river just in case.
And Oscuro walking up a little deep though.
Is it a bait? Is it all a bait? It might be. Ingo's Godspike takes so much damage though. He's just dead.
That is not a bait. That is death. That is walking up into a huge amount of damage, and that is very greedy from Oscuro.
Okay, well, that's a dead Nautilus. I was going to say something more, but instead it is just walking in and gets absolutely eviscerated in the second flat.
So, that bot lane, which we were talking up so much, saying, okay, Misfortune, Desire, we know how this works. Suddenly extra gold into that lane, sadly only the assist over Desire. Still, it's a good win from Atlanta. They wanted to have something to play around in that early game. That's the big thing that we were talking about, and this is just, again, you shouldn't really be stood there, and Oscuro doesn't end up being able to flash after the first bit of CC comes down.
Is not able to make it happen. He's going to have roamed up here towards the mid lane, see whether there's an angle onto Zonix, but with the way he's positioned closer to his jungle on the top side of the map, just nothing to be found. And we're left with a Victor Corki matchup, which is not necessarily the most exciting thing until team fights come around, so we'll leave that one alone for now, I feel.
I mean, at the start of the season, it was fairly interactive where we'd see particularly high-level matchups. The Victor killing the Corki at level 2, that was where we'd see things. But then the pack would kind of turn around and avenge that a little later into the game. But as you were saying, it is fairly neutralized as a matchup nowadays. We are kind of waiting for the first big objective to come up to see whether there is going to be any grouping towards the Herald. I'm not actually sure if either team... I'm not sure you want to play around first Herald as a Atleta, particularly when you do have high-value, very early game champions like the Karma and the rest of it. I think maybe you just want to have hands off until you can maybe get some angles through some sides after the Nas done pushing in.
I think I see the recommendation there, especially considering you're into some very nasty combos between this Fortune Jump and all that kind of jazz. And giving up first Herald, having already got yourself a little bit of a lead in this early game, you're probably okay with, as long as you can trade it out elsewhere on the map and get a couple plates in bot, you're probably okay with that trade.
No, well, not going to have a chance to push in plates right now as they're under tower, as this Dragon's taken down by Bisons. As we say that, bot lane is going to peel off as Alpha. I think once they realize they're on vision, is like, okay, let's not stick around, tank up that Dragon even longer, because that's how you get low HP, and another mistake in that river could have been exploited through that.
Indeed, but there will be no exploitation today on that particular call. They back away, cost a little bit of time for the jungler, and the bot lane of Bison. And Mighty Dragon debating going for an invade here. We'll just throw down the ward, though. We'll spot Albatraver in just a moment, who's on that vision plan, and now he's in a 1v3 as over comes Mighty Dragon, who was tanking up the Dragon, but over the wall goes Cosspect, who landed the Zenith Blade. Won't have to flash out, that will get the wall away.
Mighty Dragon killing a dragon. Now, we were theory crafting. What? Because you know there's like,
Dragon v Dragon combat.
It's like, so like if you kill your father's patricide, Shakespeare was faithful with that. If a dragon kills a dragon, I was taking inspiration from like Tyrannosaur. This I would like to dub this Tyrannicide because it's a cool word. Thank you for.
Does John Williams do the soundtrack?
If he could do, that'd be great. I'm not sure we got the budget for that.
Life finds a way, even as do our references, apparently. Either way, first dragon secured by Mighty Dragon in that tyrannicidal moment.
But I say,
I don't know think of how you conjugate that verb.
I am aware that, like, because the Latin is like Saurus is technically lizard stuff. So we should actually be Sauricide. But that doesn't sound
boring.
Cool.
Yeah, Tyrannicide.
So I'm going to choose willful ignorance, and Tyrannicide it is.
There you go. Okay, well that's where we're at. You've heard the etymology of a new word specifically for Mighty Dragon.
Okay, so every so often Sam teaches me a new word, and sometimes he just makes up a new word. And he taught me the word for making up a new word, which is called neologism.
It is.
We've done that today. Thank you for joining us again on this very eventful cast of learning things which are probably not related to that.
That's pretty much half of how we do downtime.
True. Well, there is a flash on Leona, and there are supports hanging around mid, so there was a potential of something happening. But either way, seems like both these teams really don't want to be the ones to step into enemy territory. We've seen actually everyone kind of be punished for that so far. You walk up a little too far. The ability to punish on the back end is really what's defining this early game and neutralizing so far. No one wants to be the first team to make that mistake.
We are going to see a lane swap here from Enz and Cosspect, though, and going into Moen here, who is going to just cue the wave, courtesy of a Mantra-empowered ability there to get rid of it. And with the Herald now, Smart Adelaide actually are going to be the ones to start something, despite some potential thoughts and theory crafting about why they might not want this, but they're going to start it up. Instead, it'll be Gooby and Oscure taking the plates in the bot-sided trades.
Oh, I think maybe Bisons could just wait until that first package. Of course, that's a pretty large power spike for yourselves. It spawns a little later into the game nowadays. I believe it's not around for the first Herald. It used to be at 8 minutes, now it spawns at 10, and that's every 6 minutes after that first spawn rather than every 5 after that point. So random. Just sitting around, actually built up the Vamp Scepter first. So that is going to be not a straight
Mortal Shield, though.
It's not going to be a straight like a Hex Drinker, which is normally a first time we see. It's not going to be a straight Manamune, which can come up. It could actually be in a Mortal Shield bow coming through. I'm not sure I'd like that if that was the case.
I feel like that's pretty heavily nerfed.
But to say, like, what else is that going to build into? Of course, there is that Ravenous Hydra,
yeah.
which I've not seen that built first on Corki for
not in a while. No, I mean maybe relying, or rather valuing, that's the word I'm actually liking, valuing the wave clear here into the Victor and the Xayah. Maybe that's the call. As I look.
Okay, well, no, I'd imagine, so what I would like to see is just sit on that, use that for laning prowess. Of course, he's going towards the call fields, probably just going to be going up to that Manamune, stopping off for some lifesteal first. Hasn't gone for precision secondary, so doesn't have anything lifestealy in runes. We're just saying, look, this just helps me stick in lane, and it's a decent item. Of course, in later patches in 12.7, that's going to be nerfed from 10% down to 8% in terms of base lifesteal on the Vamp Scepter, so wouldn't be able to do that on later patches, but happy to do it on 12.6.
So we'll check in later on to see whether Corki does decide to just
it's actually Death stands first to make sure that
he couldn't even not. It'd be dancing with death from us on the caster desk as we say, what are you doing?
Funnily enough, I mean, that would have been a hilarious build in season 10.
Yeah, it was very strong. Yeah.
It was the what? It was Death Stance, Shield
Renekton.
Bow. No, it was Ice Spawn Ezreal going for Death Stance.
So that was fantastic.
A trip down, not so nice memory lane.
There's been a few moments where there's been like 2 item spikes for particular bruisers and champions like Ezreal, who have done horrible things to the meta.
Yeah.
Spears Shojin Renekton comes to mind.
That was
Spears
one,
Shojin
yeah.
Jax also, you know, Death Dance.
Runeglaive,
yeah.
Way longer ago. Back in
Smite
season
mid
6.
Ezreal with Runeglaive, Power of Evil repping that one in the mid. Top lane rather. Merwin gonna have to flash out from Mighty Dragon, who is thundering, smashing his way in. Meganar comes through, knocks back the Karma, who doesn't have any way out. A decent renewal, trying to heal up with the turning off the tower, and it's gonna throw down his shield. Finally goes down, but it took a little while.
That was because Karma is such an annoying champion just to displace from their lane, but the Predator comes through, Mighty Dragon and Gabba find an extended run-up to get that champion down. It does take a couple of ultimates, does take a flash, but it's still something in the early game.
That it is, and they've got Herald and Inventory as well, which might be given willingly over to Gabbo's pocket, who of course on that Gnar will want to become a split push threat sooner than later. Prospect and Oscuri trading out his ends, taken very low by the continued poke here for the Misfortune. There's the Herald and the teleport coming through, but I believe that's still just going to be first turret down here. Sure, maybe not quite.
Not gonna be the full one just yet. May be able to clear this one out. With Mega not there, not really having the same amount of dive threat.
Racing the tower.
Happy to split the map.
Now with Moen teleporting back in, it does mean that first tower still goes the way of Bison's. I thought maybe that teleport was a little overzealous, but of course it's a Karma who does have enough damage to clear the way, and it will allow Bison's to get first tower on the other side in spite of Herald and the kill on the top side.
Yeah, so this isn't, by the way, this isn't going to be the Leandries by the looks of it from the front side of this Fortune. When you have double AP solo laners, even though the Karma's not going towards a high AP build for damage purposes on their own, you can kind of understand that, particularly when you've got like a lower damage Jarvan, you've got a Nautilus who's going to be doing an amount of magic damage too. Just going towards the straight lethality, you can understand why it kind of even things out in terms of the damage profile for that team going for the Eclipse instead of course, the new mythic we've been seeing built here and there on that marksman champion. But speaking of that tower trade again, or at least the plates trade and then the attempted tower trade as Atlanta did actually finish off that tower on the top side, you are sat here now looking at Gnar, who's gotten some extra funds, some extra finances in pocket, and that's the one way I can really see Atlanta doing something. Playing around side lanes, Gnar eventually getting to the point where he becomes a really difficult split push threat to deal with. Corki doesn't particularly want to run into that champion. Karma, as we can see, potentially a diveable threat too. If you give gold over to that matchup, I think Atlanta are happy to use that as a potential win condition later into that game, and it open up ability to push in through a side lane and then go into the big team fights.
1-1 in terms of the Dragons got a tower for plates trade that's happened. We're ending up with a game that is pretty neck and neck in terms of gold. It's about a 200 lead or so to Bison's, and that's about it, which means we're setting ourselves up for a very aggressive mid game. Cosmic's going to try and get to the Hex Gates, but he doesn't have a way out. Will flash over the wall. Renewal won't quite proc from the Karma, but Random's coming over, throws down the Phosphor into that push to make sure no one was there, and the Cataclysm comes through to ensure there is no way out. Corki donated the kill.
They've got themselves the first kill, have the Bisons now in this game, take a slim gold advantage, and Corki getting that gold is very important. Has got that Manamune stacking up, still sat on that Vamp Scepter, and we know what happens when Corki gets the 3 items. He didn't actually lose any of his damage, mind you, of course. He had himself a lot of nerfs on that package, nothing really about his base damage, so very happy now for Bisons to get one of their own big carries, more gold to play with. Of course, despite getting the kill though, they still lost out a few plates there, a couple in mid, one in the bot, so not the worst trade in the end for Atlanta, as at least Scooby will just about pick up another plate and trade in that top side, but we're still left with a game that's maybe extended 100 gold more favorably to Bison. Still very close here. We see a trade in the mid side though, as both mid laners starting to get enough damage to chunk each other out, at least in this early game. So now planing has finally fallen, we have ourselves kind of outside of like, I guess the traditional early game now. Normally we kind of stop referring to, that was the early game post that 14-minute mark when the plates have fallen. It's a bit of an arbitrary timestamp, but it's better than the timestamp that we tend to use. And let's use this time now, as we have some resets coming through to zoom out again, as we want to do on the Amazon Universe.
You did it again!
Amazon European Masters. Again, I try my very best to not flub, but my brain is very scattered at times. Other titles with some things, but either way, we are going to have both of these regions trying to get their first win. Is it going to come down to a big confrontation around this Herald? I doubt it at this point. Both of these teams do really feel like 2 item spikes. That's what you're really working around on your carry. See if they can be forced to leave their ruts a little earlier into the game, however.
Random with the package will prove enough of a deterrent right now for Atlanta to decide, I'm not sure we want this, and we've yet to see a full unleashing of both of these teams. No 5v5s, no real hardcore skirmishes yet either, and that's left us with a game that's to see its first true contest. This Herald will go down to the Bisons, and we're kind of waiting, as I suspect you mentioned earlier. I know you mentioned earlier, the 2 item spikes likely. Maybe the next Dragon might be another option here.
So Random was using the package as well, just to kind of ward off any Atleta routes towards the Herald. They had vision just into the enemy jungle, would have been able to get over into that side of the map very, very quickly and split off that team, be very dangerous at that point of game. So Atleta have to give that up, and Atleta have, again, kind of kept themselves even in this game, slightly ahead now at this point, taking over that top lane turret. Finally, took a long time to go take down that turret, of course. And both these teams, again, just waiting, holding back, starting to put some tension into the bowstring and wait for that first big play to be made. Zony's caught out on the side lane.
This might be the big moment. No, I'm still not going to have a Scurry come down. You can see him at the top edge of your screen. We're thinking about it.
See how hard we're really reaching for this?
I know.
Wow, it could be the big... No, it's not. And oh no, it's 2 people on the same screen for the first time in a minute.
And it's just like Hexgate as well meant that Ends and Cosbeck turned up far too quickly. So good discipline from Ascura there not to go for that. They'll summon that Herald in mid to secure themselves a tower here, which is actually a fairly big moment. That mid lane turret going down gives a lot more potential control here between the Corki and, of course, this Misfortune. They've got ways to clear waves pretty damn fast.
They do, and now you're looking at Bisons taking down that enemy mid lane out of turret. And one of the reasons that they would be scared in this game, were it to happen, would be of that Gnar coming in from a flank somewhere after they've lost vision. It's much harder to lose vision if you've still got your mid lane tower still standing. You have those high wave clear champions, Bisons. It doesn't look like much, and it's not very high impact in terms of the visuals. That's a big moment.
Oh, there's that attempted Gnar, but it'll be a flash away. And now the re-engage allows for the shotguns to come flying through. A bullet time and a rocket secure, a double for Random, who's now trading out with Ends as Merwin, trying to get that final kill. Flash for the Dredge line, forces the flash out and Ends as well, and it's just 2 kills over to Bisons. They continue chasing on as unstoppable goes Mighty Dragon, but he is forced away from his brethren in the Dragon Pit. And Gooby will help secure that one with Alba Traver coming in to secure this one.
That is case in point in why Atleta would really like to have unseen flanks get that vision control. It's much harder to go straight down the throat of this Bison's comp, and Gabo doesn't quite get the range right. It's a much harder combat to land, and once you are into that fight, you ain't getting out. This is a single angle fight. There are no flanks involved. Bisons get to fight all their shots in one direction and get large value out of them. Bisons, that could, as much as, again, it's not the huge 5-kill, Baron securing aces and stuff, that feels like a big tipping point.
Checking in as well with Corki build, that is Immortal Shield Bow, by the by.
Okay, so not going to be the big poke machine, it's going to be more marksman. You do have the shields from the Karma to help enable that. I do think, however, by and large, poke Corki is still the correct build to go in a lot of cases. There are no enemy shields on either side. Landing a rocket onto someone like even the Volibear, who doesn't have much sustain in themselves and doesn't scale that well as a tank. Basically anyone but Gnar you'll start landing rockets onto. It has high value, and you don't have to be within melee range to do it at that point. Very low range, so Random going for a more risky build. Yes, having the shield can help, but I feel like, again, maybe just a Hex Drinker would have been fine. Either way, that's the build that they've gone towards, and play around that from now.
Now Merwin being forced away from this bot lane tier 1, Mighty Dragon and Gabo linking up again to try and keep that Karma away from the tower. But on the other side, it's Gooby getting free time to get another tower under their belt. And now in mid lane as well, Cosbeck chunked out a little, but won't go any further. There's that tower falling in the picture-in-picture, and I think as far as gold trades, I'm probably happier giving that over to the Misfortune than I am the Gnar at this point.
That's one side to look at it as well. The other side is that Bisons just don't really care about that side lane turret if it means that they are more safely defending their mid lane out of turret. Again, Bisons very steady in how they're playing this game, and considering how their first couple of games went out where they were maybe harder compositions to play, this one seems a lot more cut and paste, saying, look, we will scale to a couple of items. We will front to back. Let's press all of our big buttons and outscale. This feels like a much more smooth game plan from them. It allows them, again, to just settle in a bit more on this stage, which they've struggled to do so far.
You could see there from the little flick over from production that it was 1,800 gold or so ahead for Random, about 1,000 up for Gooby. They're feeling very happy with the gold in their pockets. Yes, of course, topside, Gabo's got a bit of a lead. Great news for him, of course, and for Atleta on that front, but you're feeling pretty happy, at least in terms of the gold spread and gold distribution for Bisons right now. They've got their carries to 2 items.
Well, what we do have, there's a little bit of time to talk about as well, in terms of like saying, no, effectively, we've said pretty definitively, Bisons are happy if this game goes late game, right? And you think, well, hang on, is that really the case? There's a Victor, there's a Zai on the other side, don't they do a lot of damage? And the answer is absolutely yes. This comes into a larger question about what is that dreaded word scaling. Because the way a lot of people will take that kind of question is, if you're hitting training dummies, large amounts of items, you'll be doing more damage. And actually, when you have all of these members locked up alongside each other, Atlanta do have significant damage. It's not like they're completely eclipsed in that. However, in this game, when you have the Misfortune, which allows you to zone out this enemy team comp so well, and the engage options are so much more clear in terms of the Jarvan, being boosted up by the Karma to get him into range and all the rest of this, does feel like the Atlantis carries are going to really struggle to get efficiency. What does mean, however, means that the damage is still there if Bisons do mess up to a certain degree.
Don't mess up, and of course they're not eclipsed. Both AD carries have got 1 each, so they're no one's being out eclipsed.
What happens when you have 2 eclipses? Isn't that just a regular day? Or maybe it's
is it just like
it's a planetary convergence?
It's a syzygy, is what it is. That's what it becomes. It's the upgrade. Orn gets involved.
I swear more things are like, so I studied physics for a while. I did a fair amount of astrophysics. I still didn't even hear about that word in that case.
Okay, that's a bullet time. It was time for bullets, apparently. No one else was invited, though. They clearly didn't send out the invitation.
Hey, Atlanta, come mid lane. I want to show you this really cool trick. Wow,
have you seen the VFX? Aren't they so pretty?
I know it's the new skin, but it's literally just like, come to my viewing party of the new Misfortunes. Give me a... fires out some fireworks. I mean, at the end of the day, means very little.
Look at the cooldown going down on screen right now.
Yeah, it's going to be up, actually, for the next dragon. This means functionally nothing, but it gives us a good laugh.
It does it. I chuckled. That's what matters, is my dragon is actually thinking about going for a bit of a flank here, and with the bullet time down, maybe that's the angle they're looking for. But instead, they'll use this opportunity to shove in and try and secure some vision in the river ahead of this next dragon. It would be so point for Bisons, and they don't want to give this one up. They've avoided a lot of these 5v5s thus far, but I think we're about to see another.
Maybe. Still waiting on that bullet time. Atlanta gonna give up the inside track on the mid lane in terms of pushing in that wave. Bison's not shut out of the river just yet. The bullet time's back up.
Now to see whether this bullet time may land. In they go. They get onto Ems, who has to flash away. Getting that out of the sight is a big moment. Big make it rain into the bullet time across 3. Will force another flash, but no kills down right now. What can Mighty Dragon and Gabo get done? They're going to try to turn it around. 3. Big rocket does land. Mighty Dragon trying their best. Random flashing out. Still no one dies. The shields from the Defiance of Karma secure a rampage for Random. The Death Ray doing a lot of work on the other side. The Make It Rain brings down Gabo. And now the 3 remaining members at Alanto fall. A triple kill to Gooby.
Oh, and it's so hard for Atlanta to play out that fight after Ends gets shut down. The world ends. At least Atleta's one ends with that ultimate being burned so easily. The fight gets split after that point. Maybe Gabo could have gotten to a point where he can zone out enough of those carries on the other side, but very difficult fight after that point. Bisons hit their items, and as much as Dragon very nearly closes down some of the carries on that volley back, it just wasn't enough. This is the real kill moment, right? Ends so has to blow up and that flash rod, not just that ultimate. But at that point, how does Ends fight? You've blown all of your defensive tools, and you're not in a position to continue the fight after that point.
Yeah, has to face the music, face the noise, and unfortunately for him, he gets erased at the end of this fight. Oh, I appreciate Mighty Dragon trying to get through and get something done, but they can't quite secure the kills. Flash for the auto. The Make It Rain gets that one, and then it's 3v5. There's just nothing left to work with.
And what's a little disheartening, I suppose, from Adler in this fight is that it still wasn't the worst fight ever. It wasn't actually a great bullet time. The bullet time gets some HP off of Cosspec. It's not like it's hitting your carries. It's not like it's going in a single direction like we saw in that mid lane first big fight, right? Where you have everything going in one direction, all the bullets hit all the targets you want to. It's not like you got flanks to be aware of. And even with that, Atlanta couldn't stand and fight. Bisons have themselves a sole point to work towards, and Atlanta, as much as they might be able to play around some side lanes now with items up on Disnar, feels like they're running out of options.
3 items in for Random and Gooby. It's still only 2 right now for Ends and Zonix, and they're about to lose this mid lane turret as well. The map is dwindling, and at this point, you are trying to stall for 3 items, and then maybe play for this soul fight, maybe play for the Baron at that point, but you need to not bleed out. Gabo getting caught on this side is not what you need to see. Maybe you can trade out, but he's a long way off Mega. Random has still got an Immortal Shield Bow to chop through, and he'll just get that 1v1.
There you go. That's a lot of gold on Corky. That mythic item comes in fairly useful at that point. Runs down the Gnar, and Gnar on the side lane was, again, what we were saying is one of Atlanta's few options in this game. Start winning an area of the map, control that, and that gives you preferential fights. After that point, Albatrave has the oh yeah,
that's actually Jarvan. Yeah, I missed that.
The thing is, Jarvan is a champion, which I don't really care about his keystone much because he does the same thing. And I was actually wondering I was wondering a little while ago, I was like, hey, wouldn't it just be better to like not go first strike,
go spellbook?
Just go spellbook. Albatrave seems to agree at this point, and 25 minutes later we end up noticing it, and he uses it for a ghost, which achieves his nothing.
What it does, it gets his flash back up, is what it really does. And he thought maybe there was a world where Onyx had overextended, much like Merwin is likely overstunned here. He's going to be in a 4v1. Solar flared into a very dead Karma, who clearly had some bad Karma at this point. They're going to teleport to try and turn this around, though, and Atleto, they've got to extricate themselves right now, and maybe they just want to be around to make sure there's no Baron play available at the back end of this.
And I think that's fairly okay again. Bison's not willing to give over all control of this side of the map, but in Atlanta, they blew the solar flare. Didn't actually blow that much else. It was a fairly efficient pick from them. They have cooldowns remaining, and that is going to embolden them to start up this Baron.
20 seconds till Merwin is back up, does have the teleport, and Cospect is looking for the flank. Look at Gabo as well, who's nearly at Mega Gnar. Will get chunked out. They're going to pull off the Baron, looking for more Cospect. Has the angle. Who will he land on with the Zenith Blade, though? Looking to get in, manages to get onto Screw it, but it's a decent bullet time turnaround. Gabo chunked out to the backside, goes Mighty Dragon. Shot down! Random! Gooby trying to trap, but it's Mega Gnar into the wall! Still falls down as a double right now for Gooby. Still alive, they can't quite get on top of it. Finally shut down, but they can't get enough. It's still a triple to Gooby. They get both AD carries, but everyone else is dead and dusted.
And even with the momentary 5v4, Atlanta can't find the right angle. Blowing that solar flare, we said, oh, they only blew the solar flare. Yeah, but that was a really big thing. The multi-man CC couldn't come in early enough. Gooby ends up surviving the first part of that fight, getting a bullet time, which forces Gabo out from his own AoE CC. Again, look how many people are CC'd at a time. Okay, you've got like the Zenith Blade. That's kind of it in terms of AoE CC for most of this fight. Look, Gabo's been forced out. No one's really been held to account so far at this point at Atlanta. As much as they had an angle, couldn't quite coordinate well enough, and Bisons play the defense pretty well.
They do, even in the 4v5, they've still got enough damage that with their last gasps, Random and Gooby managed to bring down the entire team of Atlato, it felt like, in that one. And it was a feel-good moment for a moment there for Atlato. They were really close to getting a lot of what they needed to. Can't make it work, but at least with the HP bars low enough, they couldn't secure the Baron afterwards. But I have to wonder whether maybe that was looking more and more like a last gasp, a last attempt at the team fight, because the gold lead continues to extend. It's an infinity edge fourth now for Random. The moment I speak about it.
Yeah, this is the bonus of going for that shield bow, even though you go for the Muramana on the Corki. You get the 4 items, you can actually build an infinity edge. You have yourself a non-crit item. It's a problem with the old Sundra build. Things get a little dangerous. Well, Dragon's in a bit of damage.
Dragon's going to take some damage, but he's healthy enough at this point. There's another word for scaling. The scales on the back of his high, tanking up a lot on the other side. But Cosmec, certainly not as tanky, falls down into the Cataclysm. Is left Sonic's the bullet time, shreds a few more, and the back end of it, they claim everybody else. It's Gabo alone who's trying to run away, gets a Mega Gnar onto the jungler. Albatreya still staying alive, misses the flag and drag, but Random will hop forward, landing another big one, misses that one, misses another, but it's now Fancy Feet alone and a Gatling gun, which Gabo has got to try and trade out with. Maybe can run far enough away to get some more down. Merwin trying to zone this guy out. I think he's sure to fall here, I say, as he does finally down in the top side of this.
And while he's going down, mid lane inhibitors falling, Vice's pushing in for the end, putting down that standard, the extra attack speed. Here we go, cycling through the passive.
Can they hold on? They've got away, but 8 seconds on Sonics. I just don't think it's enough. And Bisons, with a stable game, with an upfront team fight, can't come out victors here. Their first win of the Amazon European Masters.
I think on the checklist of things that Bisons wanted to do today, probably was just calm things down a little. Yeah. It was to make sure that they could steady that ship, as many teams will need to do after their first couple of games, especially if they have some of those really crushing losses coming in before. But Bisons, the team which was so excited, so exciting as a team, and excited, I suppose, in their own seats as well. But we're sat here and you're looking at Bisons coming through for their first win.
Alas, that is it from myself and Nightmare, because we have to throw to a break where afterwards Viperune and Goldborg will be taking you through some incredible matchups. One in particular is coming up, Gamer Legion versus X7, 2 potential favorites for the tournament, so you better still be in those seats in a few minutes' time.